Sweet. We're back.
We are back.
Yeah. Episode 5. Kind of like, because you guys are listening to this like straight up back to back to back, but for us, we shoot in pockets. And so this episode and the next episode will be like 3-4 months of space for us at least.
That's the thing. People will be like, oh, that thing you said in the podcast or whatever. And then I'm like, when did we shoot that? It's like,
yeah. But I feel like God's giving us the words though, because most of our stuff, I don't know. I feel like.
Oh, yeah. It's straight from him.
Yeah.
It's off the dome most of the time.
I feel like it's solid. Don't tell me it's off the dome, Kyle. They're supposed to know that. But no, what have you been up to?
Finished up my internship today, actually.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun. So, yeah, pretty much the culmination of the summer. And then today, it was a little sad, honestly, just saying goodbye to everybody. But at the same time, it's nice because then I'll get to enjoy. I have one more week of summer break and then head back down to school. So I don't have to work next week, which is really nice. But, yeah.
I was feeling that last week a little bit when we finished. But tomorrow I'm headed to Virginia.
How you feeling about that?
I'm ready. I packed everything up. So I'm the type of person who just uses trash bags to pack up my stuff. Like some people bring all these bins in and like I grab these big black heavy duty trash bags and I just throw all my stuff in there. So it looks terrible, but like it just got to get from one place to another.
Functional.
Yeah. I got tackled by a dog yesterday.
Oh yeah? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we were at my youth pastor's place and everyone who came in the backyard, we were tackling into the pool. Like it was non-negotiable. Negotiable. I wish I could speak English sometimes.
It would be kind of helpful.
It would, especially since we're podcasters now.
Exactly.
But I went to tackle one of the guys who came in, and I like grab him around his waist, and the dog sweeps my legs, and now my knee. Every time I'm going down the stairs, it's clicking on me. It's like
Did you end up
bruise on my knees.
Did you end up in the pool?
He did.
Oh, but
no,
not you.
I was trying to get him. I was already in the pool.
But
at
the
that
dog
point.
didn't.
I was the one. I jumped in first.
Oh, okay.
I
was hoping the dog tackled you in the pool.
No, while we were trying to wrestle Ty into the pool, we kicked this little dog into the pool on accident. It was fun. It was a little goodbye. But
yeah, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah. But right now is a weird. And so I feel like this kind of intros in, but it's a weird stage of my life right now. And I know you're probably, you have 2 years left of college. Only got one. Flag. And you're older than me too. But
okay, by a month.
By a month.
2, something like that.
It's a month or 2. But like, this is the first point in my life where there's uncertainty. Like going through high school, you're like, okay, I graduate high school, I go to college. Go to Liberty for 3 years.
There's just always that next
There's
step.
always that next step. And I've been offered opportunities, but I'm like, I really love podcasts. I want to do my own thing. Like we're growing. I think that I can travel and speak, but there is so much uncertainty behind that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the main thought in my head is like, what if I can't? Or what if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
Like what happens then? And I know I'm young, like there's always opportunities, but I think that's been a big, I don't know, thing in my life. Just uncertainty.
Well, especially in those moments, like everyone always talks about like, oh, just trust God, everything will be fine. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we need to do that, but that's so tough. I don't know what's coming next, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I think I think the thing that's driving me most right now is God, obviously. I feel like God is really calling me to this. And I've been praying I need to pray more about it, especially because like that's very relevant right now.
Yeah.
But everyone around me also has been telling me like, you got this. Like when I tell people my dreams, I feel like they sound so crazy. Like, man, I want to just go on tour next summer. Like what? I'm going to be 21 years old. Like go on tour.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's dope. Like, let me know if you're speaking near me at all.
Yeah. And people are down for it.
Yeah. No one like questions it. And when I say it, I'm like, I always think people are going to be like, you're crazy. Like that sounds wild. But everyone's like, oh yeah, that's great. You're going to be great at that. Like, keep chasing that. Even my dad, like the other day I was talking with him about it. He's like, go for it. Like, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
But there's still this like thought in the back of my mind, that uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, I've known you for quite a while, and the crazy ideas have been around for a long time too.
They
made them happen. So like, why stop now?
Have they ever worked though, Kyle?
This one is in the process of working. This is in the process of working. We're not going to talk about some of the other ones, but
Mick Clothing.
Mick Clothing.
Shout out MIC Clothing.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Oh man.
This one is in the process of working.
we're not gonna say it's worked yet, but
Yeah, we can't say it's worked yet.
Yeah.
It kind of has.
yeah. Well,
I mean, I feel like you can say it's worked because like season 2, by the middle of it, we were getting 100,000 views across all platforms. Like that's a lot of people hearing the gospel and hearing about God. So that's a dub.
Yeah.
Even if it hasn't like supported us financially, like it's a win for sure.
yeah, yeah. What about like the I can't mentality do you find to be the hardest thing?
So I think because right now it's something like I do feel very called to like traveling and speaking. And so honestly, at the end of the day, like if we're dissecting weakness, 'cause that's what the theme's about, I think it's a lack of trust to a certain extent. And over the summer, it's really easy to live in the moment and just be very present in my circumstance. 'Cause I was leading, like it was very like, I don't know, it just, I wasn't looking forward to any, like college is great, but I was really excited and
Yeah,
content
just
just being
focused
there.
on what you're doing right now.
Exactly. And now that I've gotten back, it's like I'm really excited for Liberty, but it's also like what's after that.
After that.
And I don't want my like all my thought time to be consumed with that. But like this week I started to send out emails to camps and stuff. And one camp responded today, which was exciting.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a yes, but it was like, hey, we'll
not a
consider
no.
you. It's not a no.
Yeah.
And so, but I really want, like I feel like it's so hard to do ministry when we're not living in the present. And so I don't want to neglect anything that's currently happening.
Yeah.
But
I was actually, sorry, not to interrupt.
go for
but
it.
I was actually just talking to one of my friends about this, like with ministry specifically, but I think this applies to a lot of things. It's so hard to find that balance of being open and being willing to God's plan and will for your life.
Yeah.
But it's like, how much do you step in and make opportunities happen? It's like you want to be open and let God's plan kind of just take over and lead your life. Like you want him to do that. But you're also like, to a certain extent, you do have to create those opportunities and make things happen.
Yeah.
So it's like finding that balance of how much you play a part in the role of like letting God direct your life, you know?
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like people don't know who I am. God's going to provide. Like I trust that God has me on this path for a reason, but I also feel like I need to go send out emails, like get on the phone, like start
being
making these
active with
connections,
it.
being networking. But
Yeah. Have you found any like, I don't know, like just encouragement and things that are helping you stay in the moment and kind of live with that? Or
I think I need to get back into a routine because right now being at home is not like it's good, but just being on the road for 11 weeks straight, like it was a chaotic routine, but there was a level of routine in my life. And now that we're back in Indy, it just feels like everything's been up. And it's so hard to break that.
yeah. I mean, I think it's important to remember that we can't, you know? Like so often we're like, oh, if I just try harder in this situation or put more work in, put more hours in, like it's going to happen. And to a certain extent, like, we shouldn't be lazy. Yeah, you should be a hard worker, but we're human. We're going to make mistakes. Like, you can't to a certain extent, and you have to give your life over to God and just trust him in that instance. I mean, that goes right along with what James says in chapter 1, verse 12, I think. It's like, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. It's like, you're going to go through tough times, but you have to remember that God is what gets you through those tough times.
Yeah.
You know?
For he will receive the crown of life.
Yeah. So.
That is a good reminder. Yeah. So as we were preparing for this, not to switch off to like
story time with David.
Story time. So I was up in DC area hiking with a friend, Jackson Bly. I was staying at, he let me stay at his house for the weekend so I could get a flight back to Indy. And we're on the Appalachian Trail. We're on a part of it. It's super beautiful. But at this point in my life, I was still doing backflips. This was young and spry David, who still had that athleticism in him. I can't. I'm washed now.
This was D1 athlete, David.
This was D1. This was D3 athlete, David. This is the David that I could have walked on at Cedarville. I'm just kidding. Now I feel like I'm full of myself. Well, I am full of myself. I'm working on that, guys. Okay, back to the story.
Backflip David.
So backflip David. Yeah, so we're on the Appalachian Trail. And there's this guy walking in front of me. And for some reason, I was joking about, like, how funny it would be if I made a TikTok and just taught people how to do backflips just on the street. This dude overhears me. It's a group of college students. And one guy's like, yo, you can teach people how to do backflips? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, can you teach me one right now? And so we found, like, this kind of flat place. This dude didn't even know my name yet. And so I was like, all right, so what you're going to do is you're going to jump and tuck, and I'm going to throw you around. And then after you do it a couple of times, you're going to try it on your own. Homie just sent it. He didn't even know my name. He's just like, all right, just jumped. He lands at first try. Now, I, like, threw him, but he, like, lands on his feet, which is very, like, shocking for the first attempt.
Yeah.
And I was thinking back to this story, not that it's related to God in any way. They might have been Christians. They were pretty cool guys. But I was like, I wish I had that kind of trust in God sometimes. That I would, like, the trust to where I didn't even know someone's name. And I just was like, teach me how to do a backflip.
Yeah.
You're like, you could land, you could have been paralyzed for life.
I
like
know.
the amount of trust that takes. And yet I struggle to trust God with the little things in my life. Like, I don't know.
I feel like that's a good analogy.
I feel like it is a good analogy.
Because
But
it's kind of like one of those just full send it type of thing. I mean, even for your instance of wanting to speak next summer or kind of go on tour, I mean, some might say that's a pretty unrealistic goal for how young you are or whatever the excuse might be. But it's like, I don't know, if you're willing and you feel like that's where God's calling you, you kind of just have to go for it. And if that's what he's calling you, he's going to open up doors and opportunities. And if he's not, he's going to make that pretty clear.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
yeah, the backflip. I mean, like when I learned how to do a backflip, I'd known the guy for weeks and like I trusted him to teach me correctly. This dude didn't know me. Like we need to have that childlike trust.
Yep.
Not calling you a child, whoever you are, if you're watching this. I still don't remember. I don't know his name. I introduced myself after I taught him how to do a backflip.
Now that you've backflipped, my name's David.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Moses. That's not a transition, but obviously like when we're talking about people who God used for significant things, but at first had a lot of doubt, like Moses is the first name that comes to mind. There's a lot of names.
Yeah.
God uses a lot of broken people to carry out his plan. I mean, we're all broken, I think, to a certain extent. But I was thinking in Exodus 3. All right, yeah, Exodus 3:10. So actually, let's backtrack. Let's go all the way to 4. Because this is not super relevant with the with what we're talking about, but it always makes me think. So Exodus 3:2 at the very beginning, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. Okay, stop here. So, who's he talking to? Moses is out he's with the sheep. Like, there's no one there.
He's talking to the sheep, I
Is he
guess.
talking to the sheep? Are we seeing inside of Moses' like thoughts?
Yeah.
But it says, and I said, like, I will go turn. But I'm like, when I read this, I'm like, is this man going crazy? Because he has been out with the sheep for a while, but I don't know if I can call Moses crazy.
A little too much time in the desert.
Yeah, but that was so off topic. When I was reading this morning,
It
I'm
just
like,
kind of caught you off guard.
I'm like, who's he talking to?
Yeah. That's funny. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you think he's like crying out to God in that instance?
It just says, and Moses said, I will turn aside to see the great sight, why the bush is not burned.
Maybe he just had to like vocalize it for himself to know it was real.
Maybe we are just seeing his thoughts.
Yeah.
Or it's just such a, I don't know. It just
Yeah.
makes me, but okay, let's skip ahead to verse 10 because I didn't really, bush is burning, yada, yada, yada. God says, take your shoes off, and he comes into the presence of the bush.
Painting the whole picture.
Yeah, I just had to paint the picture. But then God is saying, come, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. So first thing I see there is Moses' first response. Moses is a murderer. We always forget that Moses is a murderer. Like, he did kill someone. That is why he fled Egypt. Mm-hmm. But his first response isn't like, I'm a sinner. He doesn't lean into his weakness first. He doesn't make excuses for why he can't. He's like, why'd you choose me?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But at the same time, it's like, I can't do it. Like, why? Like, I'm not.
Yeah, he had those same self-doubts that we can have today too. I think kind of backing out and seeing the bigger picture, that's really encouraging. Like you mentioned it, that God uses a lot of broken people throughout the Bible. I mean, Moses is a great example.
Yeah.
Of just someone who doesn't initially trust God or doesn't have that confidence in himself or in God for that matter. And yet that didn't matter to God. He was like, I still have a plan for you and a purpose, and I'm going to make sure that happens. I just think so often we think that God's plan is dependent on our actions, and that's just so not true.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes, God can work through us in our actions, and he's going to, but just because of what we do does not direct God's plan. It's kind of the other way around. And so often we forget that, you know, it's God's plan that should direct my actions rather than reverse.
That's good. That's so true. Because so often we live, and it's back to like that self-obsessed, but we think that we're doing things for God when in reality God's doing things through us. Like
Yeah.
you said, like, yeah, that's a really good point.
Even just like another example is Gideon from the Bible.
He was a bum. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
You know?
He kind of was though.
Yeah. It's just like another example of he did not trust God like over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you would think that God would just be like, all right, I'm not using this guy, like time to find someone else. But he had his plan and his will, and it didn't matter really what Gideon did. God still was able to work through him. And I just find that amazing. We need to remember that in our own lives. Like, yes, decisions are scary, and we might think that we might mess it up or whatever, and we run into the problem of, I want everything planned out. I want to know what's coming next in my life. But it's like, take a little breather and realize that, yes, you might mess up, but God can still work through you. You know, you don't have to get every decision perfect, which I think is important to remember.
And Gideon, was very, like, doubted, make the fleece sweat, or like just constant, like Gideon was kind of a coward if we're being honest. And then what frustrated, and this is off topic, I don't know if I should go here, but Gideon, see, this is crazy. Gideon at the end becomes just like the Midianites, the people who God called for him to conquer. Like he takes concubines, he takes riches and stuff. And God still has favor over Gideon, even though like he is very clearly living not according to God's plan. And then Gideon dies and the people go back into their evil way. Like it's crazy that someone as broken as Gideon could still somehow be a light for the kingdom. Because I'm just looking at his life and I'm like, this dude, somehow God still used him. And he was, that God was working through him. And that just shows so much. Like it's God doing the work, not us.
Yep. And I think that's just a testament to God's love. You know, you see that all throughout the Bible, just so many broken people and so many people, like even Samson, he's another example of that. Yeah. Who just kind of got caught up in his own self-confidence and that ended up really not working out for him. But then in the end, he repents and turns back to God, and God is still able to work through him. So it's like, I don't know, I find that amazing, just how unconditional God's love is. And so often, I think we as Christians like to take God's love and put it in a box. And it's just like, you know, this is what I know from like a worldly perspective as love, but God's love is just so much greater than that, and we often don't realize that. So, I don't know, just something to keep in mind. Like, you don't have to get every decision right. Like, God's love covers that.
Yeah, and it's just not just constant like just Bible character for Bible character. Because I think of Jonah. Like Jonah I had a very different plan from God's plan, and continually just like kind of like got beat around until he's like, all right, God, like I'm ready to follow your plan. Like obviously, and God could have used anyone. Like God didn't need Jonah. Jonah was doing, I don't want to say doing nothing for God, but like
kind of a more lazy person, you might say.
I wouldn't even say lazy. I would just say fearful.
Fearful, yeah.
Because he just didn't want to. He did everything in his power to get away from Nineveh when like God, like it was God's plan.
Yep.
And eventually Jonah's like, all right.
Yep. I think that's the thing with God's going to open doors and he's going to close doors. And it's like, if this is what he wants you to do, it's going to happen. Like doors are going to open and opportunities are going to pop up. If it's not, I think he's going to make that very clear that that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So I don't know. That's where that trust comes in, I think. But yeah, another kind of just going along with this topic is like, not so much of the I can't, but I think often when we're in these situations, it's really easy to have kind of a bad self-image of yourself, or you're just like, oh, this situation's so hard, like I can't do this, whatever. And then you start to feel bad for yourself, and it's really easy to kind of compare your situation with other people's situations.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of a whole nother topic in and of itself. But just another danger with this to not get so focused on where you want to be, but like what you were talking about of living in the moment and living in that present.
Yeah. And at least for me, I use comparison. I think a lot of people use comparison as like you compare your behind the scenes with people's highlight reels. I get stuck in the opposite like mindset is I feel like I compare myself to make myself feel better about like almost as like oh snap, I've done a lot more than them for their age.
Yeah,
like,
you have
like,
that higher self-esteem.
Like that higher self-esteem, which is so terrible. And it's like anytime I feel like I'm doing a bad job, I compare myself to others. I'm like, oh, I'm actually like,
yeah, I'm actually not too bad.
Yeah, and that's such a terrible way to look at that too.
Yeah,
I feel like it's so off topic from what but
I mean, yeah,
throwing the weakness on the table, man.
Exactly.
Just throwing the weakness on the table.
I think for people who might be struggling with that, like look at Philippians 2, where Jesus, which I don't have it memorized, and I should have it memorized, but it's like
the humility of Christ.
Yeah, the humility of Christ
became sins.
Because like he's equal with God, and
Yeah.
he doesn't find that anything to be grasped. He's like, I'm a man, and if you want to, I'll keep talking, and you can pull that up
one
there.
goes hard.
But it's just like we as Christians so easily can compare ourselves to other people and often be like, oh, I have this under control. I'm doing so much better. But it's like when you look at God or Jesus for that matter, like he had every reason to be better and he wasn't, you know, he showed that humility.
Who though, or have the mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross.
Yeah. I mean, that even goes along with what we were talking about earlier, just following God's purpose. Like Jesus was so grounded and knew his mission that God had given him that it didn't matter. Like he showed that humility and was willing to die on a cross.
Yeah. And every episode comes back to the gospel.
Yeah.
I feel like Philippians 2 is one of the best examples. Because like you were saying, like he was God. Like he shed off his deity of God. I mean, he still was God in a sense on earth, but he like became like us. Like he went through the things that we go through. He didn't have to do that. And he did that, like he was obedient to the point of death. Like death. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's the gospel is so crazy.
It is
man.
crazy.
You ever heard the story about the hero dying for the villain? That's a Christian rap lyric. I haven't thrown one of those in a while.
I know,
so.
probably since like, that's been a long time.
Yeah, that's been a lot. It used to be one per episode.
It was, if not more. Yeah. No, like you said, it just always comes back to the gospel. Just whenever you're feeling like you're not enough or starting to compare your life with someone else's, just look back at Jesus's example, you know, and that will humble you right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another aspect of this though is like prayer, you know, because if we're not actually spending that time having that relationship with God, we can't expect to know what he wants for us, you know?
No, exactly. That's something I was thinking about the other day is I always tell people like I'm praying for them and I'll say a quick prayer for them or whatnot because I don't want to just be lying about that.
Yeah.
But like, how's my prayer? Like, I feel like my prayer life could be a lot better. Like, and I really need to get better about like technology, but it's it's almost numbed my mind to not be able to sit still and talk to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to slowly become the type of person who can sit for like 20, 30 like minutes and just like in deep prayer.
Have that conversation with God. Yeah.
And not just about my own life. I want to intercede for others, like that intercessory prayer.
Yep.
But
yeah, because it's one of those things like I find this very humbling. I'll look around at like all my friendships and whatnot, and I realize how much time I'm pouring into them, and I'm like, how much time? Yes, I set aside time and like read my Bible and whatnot, but how much time am I spending talking to God? And it's like very, very small compared to the amount that I'll go hang out with friends and whatnot. And it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things. It's great. It's like having just your best friend that you can tell anything, and that's so helpful sometimes, I think, just to get things off your chest and help you think through it. And God can give so much peace and clarity through those times, I think.
Yeah. And it's like we say we're trying to follow God's will for our life, but if you're not communicating with him,
then what are you doing?
Then what are we doing? Yeah. Then like, how can I be following God's calling over my life if I'm not like actively trying to follow him?
Yeah. No, exactly. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it just comes back to like seeing so many examples in the Bible, and it's nice to see that big picture, to see like how their life kind of turns out. And it's like, okay, what areas do I need to be growing in and implementing those things in my own personal life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I don't know.
Trust God.
Trust God. Talk to God, man. He wants to talk to you. He wants to be in a relationship with you.
Yeah. That's the other thing I think people forget. We feel like God's kind of just up on this pedestal and doesn't want anything to do with us.
Yeah.
But there's so many verses that talk about him pursuing us. Like, all we have to do is reach out to him, and he is chasing after us, you know? I think often we think of it almost as like a timeline. Like, God's just on the other end of this, running that way, and we have to sprint as hard as we can to try to catch him. But it's completely flipped. It's like, honestly, we're running away, and God's pursuing us. All we have to do is just turn around and seek him, and he'll come meet us where we're at. You know? Yeah.
And it's part of that process. Like, we think so much of our walk, and I said this in the church episode, of like in terms of salvation. We think of our God as a savior more than our Lord, who wants to be in relationship with us. And it's like, oh, I've accepted God, he saved me, and so I'm going to go to the church once a week, like yada, yada, yada. Like, we forget that God wants to be in relationship with us constantly. And that's something I'm trying, the prayer part, because you don't want to just, relationship isn't that morning routine of getting in the word every day. Relationship is that genuine desire to be in relationship with a all-loving God who loves us. Like,
yep. Yeah. I think the more you can think about it as an actual relationship, I mean, yeah, obviously there's differences between like what we have here, like a friendship or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think so many people, and myself included, don't treat our relationship with God like that. Like, he's our father, he's our best friend. It's just like, we don't understand every aspect of God and treat him as such, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I guess I would just encourage people who are feeling this way, like with comparison or self-doubt or just not knowing what's next in their life. Like, rather than getting caught up in everything that's going on in your life, I know everyone says this, but try to simplify it down and just focus on that relationship with God, you know? Listen from him, and he's going to open up doors and close the ones that you don't need to go down. So yeah, just seek him. Yeah,
it's funny because this episode, I feel like, was just like, I kind of put the things I was struggling with on the table, and we're like, Kyle's like, let's talk about this. And then it ended up just being but it was really good. Yeah. That was a really good closing point.
Cool. All right.
Awesome.
Well,
see you guys next week, which will be 4 months for us. Or 2 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.